In this video, we are going to take our current app and we're going to make a couple of usability enhancements to make sure that our app is usable and has a good user experience. This is important when building any app because we want users to enjoy using our app and we want them to come back and not be frustrated by it. So to recap what we've got going on with this very simple app at the moment, we've got a form with a save button. When we hit save, it then takes us to, or it doesn't take us anywhere, but it saves the values to a label on the second form here. The problem is at the moment, when you hit save, we get no alert as to whether it's worked, which is one issue, and the details in the form simply stay put. So let's see what we can do to improve upon this. So let's have a look in our code for the save button. So the save button here on click, we have the code that updates the label on form 2 with the values that we want. But what else could we do here? Well, there's a couple of things we could do. Now, we already have a label on form 1, which we could utilize if we wanted to give feedback. So let's try that. So the label is, what's the label? It is currently called label name because that's what we were using from an earlier demo. So when we type in the name, it populates this label down here as we type. We'll keep that name as it is for now. But it might be if we were making proper changes to this app, we may want to consider renaming that to something more sensible, such as label confirmation or label feedback. Okay, so what can we do with that? Well, let's say label name dot inner HTML equals saved. So we're assigning a value, a simple string, simple text to that label when we click the save button. So we've made a change, so it's always wise to check how that change is impacted on our app. Let's run it in our browser and see how that's working. Okay, so if we start typing John, we know that'll appear in that label down there, but let's try hitting save. And there we go, the label is actually updated to saved. So that's quite useful. It shows us a bit of feedback. Not particularly clear, a little bit hidden. I think we could do a little bit better. So let's go back to our code. I'm going to comment out this line because I might come back to it, but we're going to try and improve upon it. Now there is a feature, a control that's good for presenting feedback to our user called toast. And if we wanted to look up the documentation for this, we could go to the NS Basic AppStudio wiki. If we searched on Google for NS Basic toast, we would get this documentation page appear. And we have a couple of screenshots here of what this kind of looks like. And this essentially gives us a nicely styled alert box that we can configure and control. And it gives us different properties and methods. It also gives us some example JavaScript of how we would trigger this toast alert to show. And in essence, there is a single line in this example. This demonstration down here also shows us how we can customize the content of that alert through code. Let's go back to AppStudio and add some toast. So if we drag in the Bootstrap 4 toast control, if we drag it in, we don't actually see it in our app view, but we do see it on the Project Explorer. So we know it's been added. Okay, now let's add some code to make sure it displays when we hit the save button. So if we go back to our example code here, this is the line we would need. And if we go into our code, we would be putting it here on the Save button on click event. And ours is called Toast2. We probably want to rename it, but let's see how this behaves. So we've updated the app in our browser. Let's just start typing something and we'll hit save. And there we go. Okay, we saw something very briefly there. Try it again. Okay, so we had some toast appear very briefly. It seems to disappear. Now this is because this is the default behavior of that toast control. So let's go back into AppStudio and start configuring it. So let's click on the toast control and look through the properties. Okay, so on our demo, we saw that it appeared right at the bottom, and that now makes sense because the left value is set as 215 pixels and the top value is set to almost 500 pixels, so that's why it's appearing there. Why don't we correct this, and we will set it to maybe not the 25 pixels that we've got for the current layout for our input fields, but let's set it to 50, so it'll be slightly more centralized. And we'll set the right to 50 as well, and we'll set the width to auto. Let's set the top to something like 200, and that'll appear higher up in our app screen. Okay, here we next have some other attributes to do with animation. Animation, we want it to animate or fade in, fade out. We'll leave that as true because it's a nice effect. The auto hide property means it hides itself after a delay, and that's what we were seeing when we ran it in the browser. The delay here is set to 1,000, and that's actually 1,000 milliseconds, as is outlined here, which equals to 1 second. So that's why we were only seeing that alert for 1 second. If we change that to 5,000, that will be 5 seconds. So let's try that. There are also some other elements here which we'll come back to, but those changes that we've just made, let's see how they take effect. So we'll run our app in the browser. Let's just type a name and hit save. And okay, we're getting a little bit more of a useful alert. And then it disappears after 5 seconds. Okay. Our question here is, do we want it disappearing or do we want to keep it persistent? Well, from a usability point of view, you can argue it both ways, and it really depends on the functionality that you're implementing and whether there's important information on that alert. So what I'm going to do in this example is actually to switch off auto hide, so it will appear and it'll only disappear when a user actually closes it. Further down the properties, we saw there was a little image, a little icon on that toast pop-up, and that's specified here. I'm going to delete the default image that's there, so I want to keep it tidy. And then there's the default text that we have on that alert. So we can set this directly on the control properties. So subtitle, I'm going to delete. Title, I'm going to change to saved. And text value, I'm going to change that to your information has been saved. Okay, so let's see how this plays out in our browser. So let's just hit the save button straight away. Okay, and we get a toast pop up here. Your information has been saved. It's not going to disappear because we don't have a timeout. So we actually have to press the X button to get rid of it. Okay, good. So we have a toast alert that's kind of useful for our feedback. The final change I want to demonstrate here is when we hit the save button, I want to clear the values of the form so that the form is effectively reset. And again, this may or may not be appropriate depending on the functionality you're implementing, but in this example, I just wanted to demonstrate it. So if we go into our code the way we can do this is, again, it's a single line. And what we need to do is specify the form name that we want to clear or reset. And that's actually, in this case, it's form 1, because all of these elements are on form 1, and we want to clear or reset the controls on that form. And the function that we can use on that, which should appear in a list of possible functions, is reset. So we'll use reset. We'll end our line with a semicolon, hit save, and let's run this in the browser. So let's add some details. Here is a comment, and let's add a multi-line comment. And let's hit save. We get our nice toast alert. Your information has been saved, and we can see the form has been cleared. And let's just check it's actually saved to our second form. And there we go. We've got a name, and here is a comment that we've entered there.